and welcome to Ignite with Mwangala. With me, Mwangala Chakalashi Santos. Now, this is an exciting episode because we traveled all the way to Mungu and caught up with one of Zambia's seasoned politicians, a businessman, a member, in fact, a founding member of the Movement for the Multi-Party Democracy, which is the MMD, and he has a princely title, Mr. Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika. Welcome to Ignite with Mwangala.
Thank you so much. I can confess that I've been looking forward.
I like that.
And I'm glad that it is happening here at home.
Oh, wow. I love that. I mean, we had to come all the way and said, we can't just do Ignite with Mwangala minus having you on the show. I'm so honored to be here and to chat with you. Because growing up as a young girl, I used to watch you on TV every day. And I remember my father used to tell me that he is one of the most intelligent cabinet ministers that Zambia has ever produced. So to sit and have a chat with you is very exciting for me. Now, today we're obviously going to talk about not your political life, because a lot of people know your political life. But I think for starters, let me take you back to your early life as a young boy growing up. I guess it was in Mungu. What was that like?
No, it's fun. It wasn't in Mungu. Some people sometimes ask me what football club I support.
Okay.
This new generation, I don't know what got into them. They think they're Manchester, they're Chelsea. So I always tell them that I'm Nkana. I'm not a supporter of Nkana. I am Nkana.
I love that.
So I was born in Usakile, African Mine Workers Township, in 1948. Usakile is in one of the towns in the world that has two names, Nkana, Kitwe. Nkana is the mine section. The rest of the town is Kitwe. Altogether, the city is Nkana, Kitwe. That's where I was born. In 1948, which coincided with the formation of the first African political party, the Northern Rhodesia African Congress, whose founder, President General, was my father.
Wow.
So I was born into a home which was involved in the trade union movement, the political development, the welfare movement, and so on in Usakile, Africa. My father, of course, is the son of King Lewanika I. He was born very near here in Lialui in 1905. My mother was also born very near here in Lukona, which is across the other side of the Zambezi. But my mother's family, before 1884, were located in the Sisheke Kaprivi area. They are Subias. So that is basically the family I was born in. When I was born, my siblings at that time were Boinonge, Umbuyana, and then I was the last one at that time when I was born. My other brothers, Bomwanangono, was already in school in South Africa, a famous school called Tiger Kloof. My other brothers were in school in Barotseland at that time. So that's where I was born.
And then later on, you moved to Mungu.
In fact, much later on. In fact, when I was born, in Usakile, I started school in Usakile, primary school, where my mother was a teacher. In fact, my mother was a founder teacher at Usakile when Mr. Nkumbula was headmaster and Mr. Kapwepwe was a teacher for adults, and my mother was a teacher for children. So the three of them started Usakile school. So I started school there. I was very excited starting school. I was so excited that I was impatient with those who were preparing me. I actually ran to school to go and register myself.
Oh, wow. How old were you?
I was 6. I was very excited. But my excitement didn't last long because the following day in class, I didn't quite... I thought school was what I saw in the playing field.
Yeah.
not in classroom. And it was required. You couldn't just go out, and I wanted to go to the toilet. And the ritual was that you had to raise your hand up, have it recognized, and say in English, "Excuse me, teacher, may I please be excused?" And I didn't have the courage to do that. So as a result, when I needed to go to the bathroom, I didn't go to the bathroom.
Oh.
But soon the whole class understood that I'd gone to the bathroom.
Oh.
And so I was not very happy with that. After that, I didn't really like school. My mother, who was teaching there, they thought I was going to school, but I would come to school like everybody else.
Yeah.
And then join them when they are playing at break. So it was several days before they discovered that I don't go to class.
Oh, wow.
So I wasn't too happy. Fortunately, around the same time, my eldest brother finished his course at Tiger Kloof, and his first job was at Munali as a teacher. And he was my first hero, because when my father told me that we are going to the station because Mwanangono's train is coming, and this train impressed me so much, and I thought it belonged to my brother. So I thought, this guy who owns trains, he must be a big hero. So when he was about to go to Munali, I insisted to accompany him.
Yeah.
So I went to Munali at a school called Tunduya, which is behind Munali, from 1954 to 58. This was an interesting period because it gave me an opportunity to know who was later to become who in Zambia.
Oh, wow.
For instance, that's the time I met Mr. Rupia Banda. That's the time I met so many people who became ministers, who became in the first UNIP government. So I was exposed. In 58, I came back to Kitwe. I used to come to Kitwe during the holidays, this period, and went to a school called Kalela in Usakire. One of my schoolmates became a famous footballer. Of course, if you are from Kitwe, become a Rokana footballer, but he became Fred Mwila.
Oh, yeah.
The other people I was playing with in Kitwe were the former commander of the army, Nobi Simbeye. So for 2 years I was there. Then after that, I was sent to Chalimbana to boarding school with some of our playmates in Musakile, including Nobi and others. So we went to Chalimbana for 2 years, Standard 5 and a bit of Standard 6. After that, I went to England. I went to England to a school called Bethany School in Kent in 1962. This was the school where my uncle, my father's elder brother, Mwanangono, who became Litunga Yeta the First, the father of the present Litunga, and his cousin Wamwongo, went to school there in 1901. So 60 years later, I went to that school.
Oh, wow.
I did my O-levels and A-levels, then spent a year at Oxford College of Further Education before going to the United States, where I was in Mississippi for 3 years, then went to Cornell University. Mississippi, I went to Jackson State University, which is one of the historically black universities. Then I went to Cornell University, which is traditionally one of the main Ivy League universities, for another 3 years. Went for a year to Canada, ended up with 2 master's degrees before I came back to Zambia and joined Indeko.
Wow.
So that is basically my first basic school, although later on I did continue with
a lot of education. Okay. Now you told me something very interesting before the interview started, that, you know, I was trying to find out, how do I address you? Is it honorable? Is it Prince? You said, you know, my name actually says a lot. It just describes who I am. I don't have to rub it in to say I'm a prince. So what is your definition of a prince?
No, I think I don't mean that. I don't want to rub it in. I have no interest in rubbing it in. Of course, there's nothing to rub in. I'm just a person. No, what I meant was that titles normally mean different things to different people.
Exactly.
If I say I'm honorable, for instance, people have some idea who an honorable is. if I say I'm a prince, people have some idea who a prince
A prince is, yes.
Mostly, although I've been a member of parliament and officially called honorable member of parliament, I don't think what people think of honorable is what I am, except honorable, hopefully with a small h. And a prince, some people think you are brought up in a certain way, you are pompous, you are detached,
arrogant in a nice way.
That sort of
Yeah.
So that, except in very situation specific, of course, if I have a function at the Kuta, even where I sit,
it's different.
It requires that people should know that I can't sit where other people may sit, to sit in a particular place. Then being a prince there is functionally useful. But if I'm in Usakile, then maybe I should be more famous for other things rather than being a prince.
Wow. I mean, you are the prince, Mwanamulena, so to speak. I'm also a princess, by the way, so I had to ask that question so that you can, you know, clarify to the people that are watching us now. Now, fast forward to your university days, and I think I remember I was just telling you that my father always told me that Akashambatwa, in fact, he would call you, we all called you Aka. You know, Aka is one of the most brilliant cabinet ministers that MMD has. Where would you attribute your intelligence from? And you also told me that, you know, everybody's intelligent, Mwangala. But where would you attribute? Is it to your mother?
I would think that it's my commitment.
Yeah.
My commitment to public service, my commitment to the democratic movement, my commitment to fighting for justice. It really starts in the home. Both my mother and father were not just, my mother was a teacher, but she wasn't just a teacher, she was also involved in community development work, as necessary, and it was necessary, so that she was working with other people who were not. My father, of course, had a job as a clerk, later a welfare officer, and so on in Usakile, but a lot of his time he spent, he was in Usakile alone. He was president of the Kitwe African Society. Earlier than that, in 1929, he was secretary of the Livingstone African Association at the age of 24. And then he became the founder president general of the Northern African Congress. And they were also involved in a lot of other public civic duties. Then, of course, being a prince, he also, we could see from our home as people came that he had certain roles to play. So public service, political commitment comes from the home. But it was sharpened very much with my experience in America. The first university I went to in America was Jackson State. As I say, it's one of the historical black universities and colleges. So it was a black college, and I'm so glad I went there first. And this was in the late 60s. So I got involved in the civil rights movement. In fact, I should say that within the week when Martin Luther King was killed, he had come to Jackson. So I saw him, I heard him speak.
Oh, wow.
And he motivated us to mobilize people from Jackson, Mississippi, which is a state below Tennessee. He had a campaign in Memphis, Tennessee. And he was mobilizing people to come there and show solidarity to the sanitary workers in Memphis. And I was also involved in, I hoped to go there, I was involved in that mobilization.
And how old were you at the time?
The day before we were supposed to go to Memphis, that's the night he was killed.
How old were you at the time?
At the time, Martin Luther King, I was 20. In fact, I think politically I was born at the age of 20. Politically, I was born in 1968. Most people of my generation would tell you all over the world, 1968 was a monstrously impactful year in terms of our politicization, our commitment, our value creation, and many of us who were my age, who were at college at the same time, whether they were in Paris or London or in the University of the West Indies or in Makerere, or you would find that there is a certain, because we were engaged in the civil rights campaign in America, we were engaged in the anti-Vietnam struggle, we were involved even in France, like when the students rose up against Charles de Gaulle, we felt as if we are also there. So it was, and this is the year 68, that's the year Martin Luther King was killed, that's the year Bobby Kennedy was killed. I don't even know if even music changed. The music that were popular to us were very political type of music and so on. So I think that transformed and shaped who I am politically and my values and my commitment. Then after that in Mississippi, I went to Cornell University, which is traditionally a white college anyway, one of these, what do they call, Ivy League universities. While there, I participated in the Southern African Liberation Support Committees. I became president of the African Student Association. I even became vice president of the Pan-African students in the Americas for the whole of North America. And this really politicized me a lot, together with my whole generation. The other people I was with at Cornell, for instance, my friend, comrade Koigi Wamwere, I thought I was tutoring him in politics. When he arrived, I received him at the airport. He was a nice African liberal boy. But when he became politicized, he thought I was not radical enough. He's one of those people who were jailed by Kenyatta and Moi for a total of 13 years. Apart from Raila Odinga, he was jailed politically there for longer than anybody else. But we left the United States with a mission to come back to Africa, to end military governments and to end one-party states and to liberate Southern Africa.
Wow.
Some of us were in Ghana, were joined, they also were involved in their struggles there. Some were in Nigeria, some went to Kenya, some were Zimbabweans and Rhodesian and so on. So my whole generation was super politicized. In fact, when I came back to Zambia in 1975, after Canada, I was very frustrated because my fellow managers at Indicos were interested in Mercedes-Benz. If they go to London, what excited them was shopping. And I found them very unpoliticized.
That wasn't the case for you.
No, up to now. I mean, that you are saying, I don't know what you say that I'm a politician. I've never been a politician. In fact,
what did you call yourself?
As a politician, I'm a failure. Because a politician wants to be an MP, wants to be president, wants to drive a Mercedes, wants power. I'm a revolutionary. I want the society to change.
Wonderful.
So I don't want to be president. I'm not happy because somebody else is president who I like or whatever it is. Even like now we have a new government. What I'm watching is that are they tackling the fundamental problems of Zambia or are they dealing with symptoms?
I love that.
If they are dealing with symptoms, then they may be more efficient than others who tried, but if you are dealing with symptoms, you are dealing with symptoms. And the fundamental question of Zambia, the fault line in Zambia, the constitutional fault line in Zambia has remained the same. We have changed ruling parties, we have changed presidents, we have changed slogans, we have even changed allies, but we have not changed the system.
I love that. Now, if you're watching us now, I am talking to Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika, and we traveled all the way to Mungu and caught up with him. We take a short break. When we come back, we continue talking to Mr. Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika. In fact, I'm going to call him Aka because that's what all of us know you for.
Me happy.
Ndabola tutunywe tuganga dawa ababalombe. Usimbi wangu bebo.
No atate babia.
To kama mukoko kabenzi nina.
Kutakulwa kamba to kakasika coronavirus.
Ndawambira ndakwambira masiku tako niwati mvida. Mba ushupa mara ushupa waso.
Waine mama.
Mashasi wae.
Kuri zinto zinjimwe.
Yizinto bani bakutshaka wae.
Oza. Ndari yote. Iwe. Chachitika kunjengeni.
Ndaipompo nona.
Mtu wako olabereka kabotio. Wapimbo zinjinge.
Kwakasika ulwazi. Obulwazi batata tabuyanze kwendenda. Tabuyanze kwanzanya. Tabuyanze zokuja nkabantu banje. Obulwazi bulajaya. Apo obulwazi batata. Tabuyanze kanukuti chindi chonse nkamjani kabantu banje zokulumelesa nyanzi Ape bulezi tondezo zakaina zokuteti muntu obulwazi ulabuchiswa. Zitondezo zakaina kulikuchiswa mutwe. Sini kolo mubiri kupia. Zitondezo zakainezi. Obulwazi bulikwabila kwinda mukusamba kumanza chinchonse ansipa amanzi clean. Apa kunana akate kwakaitwa kutinzi cancer tiger.
Oho, hand sanitizer. Okay. Kubanga wakome naye, why? Kubanga wakome.
Remember to wash your hands with soap regularly. For more information, call 909. This message is supported by the Ministry of Health in partnership with Oxfam.
Welcome back. If you're joining us now, I am talking to Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika. We oftenly call him Aka. Now, you said I'm making you happy. Would you like to be called Aka, or is there a specific reason why?
I struggled telling people that my name is Akashambatwa. The more I tried, the more people chose not to call me at all. So
you decided to shorten it to Aka.
I didn't shorten it. I accepted it being shortened.
I like that. Now let's talk about the time when you were now, trying or bringing people together to fight the one-party state that I think Zambia was from the time we were independent to right about 1991. Was that journey easy for you?
No, it was not easy, and it has not been successful. I feel actually that we haven't succeeded. By the way, Zambia was born in a constitutional dispensation that established a multi-party democracy. So the original Zambian constitution was a multi-party constitution. And it was only turned into a one-party state at the end of 1972. And the first one-party state election was in 1973, so that is when it started. And it marked the reversal of the promise of independence.
Yeah.
The promise of independence had to do with freedom and justice and equality. Indeed, before UNIP, as I think we mentioned at the beginning, that my father was founder President General of the Northern Rhodesia African Congress, which was the first political party in Zambia in 1948, and he was president from 1948 to 1951. It had two slogans. One was the same slogan of all the Congress movements from Cape Town up to Kenya, which was one man, one vote. The other slogan, which was very specific to the Northern Rhodesia African Congress, was unity in team spirit. So the leadership of the generation of my father was founded on a mission to give the vote to Africans at the end of the day. It was founded in a leadership on the basis of a leadership style of collective leadership, team spirit.
Yeah.
And therefore, the declaration of Zambia as a one-party state, one, it was an imposition. It was not a democratic decision. Meant that the right to vote, which Africans in Northern Rhodesia, in Zambia, gained with independence, was compromised. Because you're right, if for your vote to be real, you must have a free choice of how to cast it. The one-party state actually directs how you should cast that vote. That you can only vote for MPs, for councillors, for presidents who are put forward by one political party.
Which doesn't give you a choice.
So it's not a choice. So it was a betrayal of that. The one-party state also rides on something that started going wrong with Zambia even before Zambia was born, which is personalized leadership, which was a betrayal of that second slogan of unity in team spirit, which indicates leadership through consensus, leadership through collective working together as a team. So that the one-party state was a betrayal of the promises of independence. It was a betrayal of the founding principles, the founding mission of the African liberation movement that it's inherited to that place. So that in 1991, when we organized to change it, we were really organized to take back Zambia where it should have been, where it should have started at the very beginning. That is why we don't say that we created a multi-party democracy. We say we reintroduced a multi-party democracy.
You were just going back to the original plan.
Now, unfortunately, the original plan was already undermined even before the one-party state. In fact, you could say the one-party state officialized the undermining and betrayal of the founding principles of the African liberation movement. But even before that, the leadership style towards personalized leadership had begun. The worshipping of leaders, the doctoring of history to prompt up this false idea that Zambia has one father, that a nation can have one father, and that the people owe their political development from one person or from one party. That spirit began, maybe I could say, by 1958. Hints of moving towards personalized leadership started. Moves away from unity in teamwork, moving away from collective leadership had begun. So by the time we became independent, we were already off the rail. I should also say that in the development towards independence was basically a constitution-making process. The meaning of independence, even the meaning of returning Zambia to a multi-party democracy, is actually to do with determining a constitution. What Zambia independence means is what was put in the original constitution. Unfortunately, even in the original constitution of Zambia, the facilitation of one-man rule of a dominant political was ingrained in it. Unfortunately, even in the founding constitution, there was no facilitation of consensus leadership. There was no facilitation of collective leadership. There was definitely no facilitation of consensus-driven leadership. This happened to also be of interest to the departing colonialists. So the Zambian constitution, more than any other African constitution arising in the decolonization process, was a constitution that consolidated and centralized power extremely. Because the Zambian constitution marries the American presidentialist system minus the checks and balances that the system made with the British parliamentary system minus the supremacy of parliament over the executive. It marries the headship of government, like a prime minister in Britain, with the powers of the queen as head of state. So it marries the head of state functions and the head of government functions. It provides for the ruling party to capture the state. It provides for the ruling party itself to be led on the basis of personalized relationship. So the disease that became an open sore with the declaration of one-party state, including some of the symptom problems that we are seeing, are deep-rooted.
Wow. Now, I know politics is part of who you are, but you've told me that you're not a politician. Maybe my question would be, how do you strike a balance between being a prince and a politician? I don't know. What do I call you? A revolutionary? Or are you a politician?
Well, you know, as a human being, as human beings, nobody's born to be a soccer player and only a soccer player, that because you are a soccer player you can't fish.
True.
Or nobody's born to be just a student of science, not of the arts. The very nature of a human being is so multidisciplinary that when we are free, we are not boxed into particular roles. So whether I'm in parliament, I often used to, like I resigned from being a cabinet minister. I was convinced that I'm continuing the same struggle. The same struggle I was on before becoming an MP, after becoming an MP, before becoming a minister, after becoming a minister, was the same struggle I've been involved in up to today.
And what is this struggle?
This is the struggle, well, let's put it that a big part of this struggle is the African liberation movement for freedom, justice, and equality.
Is it the same struggle you're fighting as a prince?
In anything, even if you put me in a soccer team, if there is injustice, if I'm being myself, I'll fight against it. Being a prince, one, it can be simply biological.
Yeah.
That, okay, my father was the son of a king, he himself became a king, therefore naturally I'm born a prince. But it doesn't make who I am. There are many, many princes. They've been, some are thieves, some are just, some are unjust. So it does not define who you are.
Yeah.
But being a prince can also be a political role. In other words, you could be a prince as a position in a government, a traditional government or a monarchy or government. That I'm not. In a big way, although in a little way maybe I am, because as a prince, on the basis that I'm a prince, I do have some homesteads and lands over which I have custody ownership. And it's very important to say it's custody ownership. It's not personalized ownership. In the same way that our traditional leaders have custody ownership over land. But custody ownership over land is different from personal ownership over land. So you own the responsibility to serve as a custodian of your villages or a custodian of that land. It's very, very important to distinguish it.
Between
and
the
some
two.
of our fault lines is when people are given custodian ownership of villages or of land, of countries, and then they personalize it.
True. Prince Aka, what is one thing that Zambians don't know about you? And I like calling you Prince Aka because that's who you are.
What Zambians don't know about me? I don't know what they don't know about me. What do you think?
Are you an open book? Do we know?
I'm more open than most public figures. I mean, if right now, if you ask the normal Zambian that who are the brothers of HH, who is the brother of Mianda, who is the brother of Chiluba, maybe Kaunda was better known, who is the brother of Mwanawasa. So many of our political leaders actually are hidden books.
And you are not.
I'm less hidden than others.
If you're on your deathbed and you were given a second chance to live, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? Not to die. Because
You're
I
not
don't
dead
think
yet.
at whatever time I die, the struggle must continue.
Yeah.
I hope that when I die, one, I would have been faithful to that struggle. I may not have won it because it cannot be won by an individual. But I would have been faithful to it, and that I've lived a life, a public life, which is consistent with my aims.
I love that.
I should also say that right now I'm writing a book on democracy and development. And the book is called, first the working title was Claimants to Democracy and I came by that first shot at a title from reading a book by one of the teachers I ignored when I was at Cornell. I ignored him because he was very conservative, and you know, I couldn't tolerate black people who are conservative. I wanted all black people to be revolutionary.
Yeah.
But later on, I've been reading his books. Now, one of the books he wrote, which is called Knowledge and Decision Making, he says that, you see, when we want to understand people or understand organizations, sometimes we mislead ourselves by giving them titles or assuming that they are their titles. For instance, he gives an example that there are many organizations called profit-making organizations. But at the end of the day, many of those don't make profit. So calling them profit-making when they don't
not
actually make profit is misleading. But so you need to ignore what they call themselves and observe how they are organized, how they operate, their character of management, whatever it is. So even in politics, we can have a party as we have had in Zambia called the United National Independence Party. If we presume that it was about bringing independence, let alone if we presume that it actually brought independence, then we'll be misleading ourselves. Because then we can't critically examine what it actually brought. The flags went up, some went down, new names. Instead of government road, you have
People's names.
whatever. Instead of government house, you have state house. Instead of governor, you have president. Instead of a white man, you have a black man. So we've changed those things.
Yeah.
But a deeper analysis is that we are not independent.
Are we? Are we not independent?
Not even a bit. Not even a bit.
What is
Because
independence
our
to
politics,
you?
even a first secretary of the British Embassy can go on the press and tell us how to govern ourselves. We are beggars. A beggar cannot be independent. We say we are in economic problems now. Are we looking for solutions independently? Or are we looking for more dependency to solve our problems? Economic problems. Why do we talk about the IMF? Do we control the IMF? If you depend on the IMF, you can't... if you don't control the IMF, you depend on the IMF, you cannot be independent. Economically. Politically, not only Zambia, but many countries, if not all the countries in Africa, are being politically pressured to take political positions, which if they were free would not take. So that if we examined how UNIP was actually organized, not how it said it was organized. For instance, it's at one time in the one-party state, it said it had given us a one-party participatory democracy. If you analyze what was actually happening, one, it was not democratic at all anyway. Two, it was only participatory for those who are UNIP. So the title itself was a lie, it was a deceit.
Sorry to cut you short. What was your relationship with the former, in fact, the late first Republican president, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda?
You see, President Kaunda is of the generation of the Nkrumahs, the Nyereres, and so on. So basically, one admires them, but I don't worship him. And I don't blind myself to seeing what is wrong. In other words, however good Kaunda is, a one-party state was wrong, and it was unjust, and it was not democratic. And to say so is not to disrespect him. In fact, not to say so to me is to disrespect him. Because you see, if you are going to praise him with lies, I don't think that is respect. That was
not respect.
I don't even think it's love. Someone who wants to express their love to you by lying to you, not telling you when you are wrong, I don't think they genuinely love you. So I think that I'm a great admirer of that generation of leaders.
And who is your mentor?
My mentor?
Or mentors?
Mentors, many. Yes. My father and this generation of leaders are my mentors. Even out of the Kaundas, the Nkrumahs, there's a lot that I take. For instance, if you take someone like Nkrumah, I admire this idea of someone leaving Africa to go abroad to study, reinforce himself,
and then come back.
I love the struggle. I like that.
Wow.
Even with KK, the idea that people can dedicate themselves to a political struggle and be prepared to go to jail to sacrifice for that. I admire that, and it inspires me.
Have you been to jail before in your struggle to freedom?
No, I haven't.
Okay. What lessons can we draw from your life? I know we don't have a lot of time, but you seem to have this wealth of so much knowledge. Maybe my questions to you would be, what are some of the lessons that one can draw from your life? And are you mentoring anybody that can take over from where you would like to live? I know you've said one of the things you don't want to do is to die.
One thing I am happy about is when I look at my children. They are more Aka than Aka is. They are more true to what I want to be.
Than you are.
In terms of how they relate to jobs. They face the same pressure as many peers.
Yeah.
Like I'm 100% sure that none of my children will ever be corrupt.
I love that.
Never.
Is that coming from the father?
That's coming from me. It comes from my father. And it's not something that I sit them down, that I'm mentoring you, don't be corrupt. But it's something I'm pleased that by whatever means it has happened. So I would also hope that not just my children, but the younger generation. I often, lately more often than before, my message to young people is that all of us have a very good idea what a good leader is. We have a very good idea. So our first duty is to be the leader we want the good leaders to be.
It starts with us.
And be consistent that, you see, you can't corruptly become a presidential candidate or a parliamentary candidate for your party. and hope that after your party makes you a candidate, then you become clean. You can't. You can't corruptly become president and corruptly become an MP and then be non-corrupt afterwards. Many young people are misled to, and not only in this generation, in many generations, that the end justifies the means. That you can use crooked means, but for a right cause. My message is that that is never, never, never true. Corrupt means lead to corruption. Wrong means wrong to wrong ends. And if I was to criticize the generation of the Kaundas, the Nkrumahs, whom I admire, is that they thought that they were self-righteous. They thought that because they were convinced that this is the right thing, you are convinced that all Zambians should vote unit, then you use all means necessary
To make sure that
they do that. Then you hope that a good end like unity can be. It's really incredible that people thought that you could unite a nation by force.
doesn't work like that.
That you change the constitution to ban other parties, and then you think you have succeeded in uniting the nation because nobody has a choice except for your party. So their fault was to think that the end, which they thought was good, is justifies the means, which in their better selves they knew was wrong. Because as freedom fighters, what were they saying about the colonialists?
Imagine,
They
yeah.
said the colonialists are dictators. So it means when they became dictators, they knew better. But they thought that the end of uniting the country or the end of them becoming president is justified.
Great. Now, quickly, I know we're out of time. I saw you have so many books, I think thousands. They're in their thousands. Give me one book that has changed you.
There are many books.
Just
I'm
one.
changed every day by book. Okay, let me just quickly say, there are certain books that I keep referring to. Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, particularly that one, but both of them ran through almost all the things that I've done about it. I think if I was to pick two off the top of it, but there are many, and every book I read inspires me. Maybe I'll tell you a short story that one day a young man found me here in my book, my
Your library, yeah.
He found me reading. So he looked at it. Have you read all these books? I said, many of them I've read them and I'm still reading. Then he found me reading a book on Ramaphosa. Then I told him that, then he said, are you not lonely? I said, no, I'm not lonely. You see, this book I'm reading of Ramaphosa, it's as if I've been visited by him, his mother, all the people he knows, his fellow students. So if I finish reading this book, I'll get more information than if I just met Ramaphosa.
Exactly.
So my books are like 1,000 people in each book. And then they are nice because if the people I meet in a book bore me, I can just put it back in the shelf, put another book with a set of better people to talk to.
I love that. Prince Aka, what is a background to the kingship?
In Barotseland?
In Barotseland, yes.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's in Southern Africa particularly, maybe in the whole of Africa. You have two types of kingships, if we are going to be gender insensitive. That you have the kingship modeled after the Chaka, that he himself conquers a bunch of natives, and those he conquers, he tells them, I'm your king. Okay? Or you have the other one, which is the Barosi model, that in the beginning people had no kings. The people themselves decided that in order to manage their common governance and so on, they need a king. So the Barroso system is that it's the people who decided to have a system of government based on having kings. In fact, their first monarch was a woman, a queen. So they decided to have a queen. It was not the queen who decided to be a queen.
The people decided for her to
and
be queen.
The queen did not conquer those people. So now that I've conquered you, I'm your queen. Okay. Now what that implies then is that the kingship of Barroso is not an entitlement. It is a privilege. And it's a privilege by grace from people. And it's a responsibility on behalf of the people to do the people's will. And therefore, the people chose the system of government, of kingship, and they have ever since been choosing also who is to be king. Not the kings choosing themselves. So being a king of Barroso is not an entitlement. No one can go to court that, you put the wrong person, I'm the one who should be there, because nobody has a right to be there, except who the people have chosen. And once they've chosen, that's it. We are privileged, I think, as a family, that for 400 years, the people have been deciding to choose their kings
from your family.
From our family bloodline.
Wow. 400 years.
Yes. Now,
straight.
That is not because we are inherently special or that we can beat them up if they choose from somewhere else. It is something we have to just gracefully accept as a responsibility for that. So that is really the system of the Barroso kingship. So
do you have some kind of a plan for succession, or it just happens?
No, you see, the people may have plans, and they are not obliged to tell, even if they want you to be a king, they are not obliged to tell you that we are planning for you to be a king.
It just happens because they've decided.
Yeah, they've already, at any given time we have a king. So at any given time, the question does not arise.
Yeah, I like that.
Of
Of course.
So, but it is not up to, in fact, culturally, those of us who are members of the royal family, we are brought up not to show indecent curiosity over that process. We shouldn't be part of it.
Wow.
We shouldn't go around like you want to be president.
Like I'm the
Zambia,
next one, I'm
that,
campaigning.
If you make me your leader, I'll give you buses, I'll bring the meal price down. We can't do that. So self-promotion is not part of our process. Not only in the choice of kings, and this is very important, that in the Barroso tradition, which is the same as in the African indigenous traditions, when there are not circumstances of wars such as those that produce Chaka, that one of the clearest disqualification for leadership is to want to be a leader. So whether you are looking for a village headman or a headmaster, you have to watch out that those who really want to be in those positions may be exhibiting wrong characters. Because leadership is a service position. It's to serve people.
Yes.
So I can't kill you in order to save you. I can't bribe you to save you. I can't endear myself to you to save you. If I'm privileged to be asked to save you, then I have to just have the heart to sacrifice myself to save you. So it's not a position to be campaigned for or that. So the number one disqualification of leadership is indecent curiosity, ambition to be a leader.
Okay. Now let's talk about the controversial Barroso land agreement. What is it? Where are we with that?
There is no Zambia without Barroso agreement. Those that abrogated the Barroso agreement endangered the very state of Zambia. Before I go into those details, let me say that something Zambians don't know because they've been cheated. The Barosland Agreement has one statement, one phrase, indicating its purpose. And its purpose was to create one country, one nation. It was signed in May, long before Zambia existed. So it says one country, one nation. That's where one Zambia, one nation
Came
from.
from, yeah.
It doesn't come from a Bemba marrying a Ngoni. Africans have been marrying each other for centuries. We are all mixed. So that's not what one Zambia as a nation. One Zambia, one nation arises from the Barroso Agreement, which means if you abrogate the Barroso Agreement, you are rejecting that idea. And those who reject that agreement, who reject that idea, and pretend to be the proponents of one Zambia are very deceitful. And they are killing Zambia, and they've probably already killed it. So, now the Barosland Agreement. Why was there a Barosland Agreement? Why wasn't there a Lubemba Agreement? The reason there was a Barosland Agreement is because in engaging with the colonial, European colonialists, Barosland engaged them as Barosland. Barosland was not created by white people. It was not created by Zambians. It predates colonialism. It was a functioning nation state with a government, with a king, who was able to engage in international relations to proactively address the threat of European colonialism and to face that threat by seeking protection from one of these threatening forces, preferably the stronger or the more nicer one of them. Barosland, Mangwato in Botswana, Masutu, Kwalisutu, and many Africans, so that among these Europeans, the better devil is the British. So that's why they solicited. Barosland was never conquered. There was no European army which entered Barosland to conquer it. But Barosland proactively engaged those people towards negotiating a protection. Protection, it was protecting what? It was protecting the nation state and government of Barosland, an indigenous African government. It was not protecting something that didn't exist, it was protecting what exists. So having engaged the British as a state, and the British had more interest than just engaging with us. They had interest in South Africa, they had interest in Matebele land, they had interest in Buganda and all sorts of things. So for their own administrative convenience, they first used the British South African company as an agent. The Barrosis were never happy with that. They didn't want an agreement with the company. But they were reassured over and over again that the BSA is an agent of the British Crown. But even after being reassured, the Barrosis never ceased demanding a direct relationship with the colonial office, which finally was granted in 1924. So even in 1924, Barosland engaged the British government through the colonial office as an entity on its own. Now, for their own administrative convenience, they decided that first, as I said, to use the BSA company, next to use the British High Commission based in Cape Town at first, and administer their protection together with the administration with protection over Botswana, Basotho, what became Basotholand, Bechuanaland, and so on, from Cape Town. Later on, again, at their own convenience, after discussing with us, they convinced us that administrative is more efficient to attach Barotseland to Northwestern Rhodesia. That's a longer story, Northwestern Rhodesia, that we may explain another day. And in 1911, to attach Barotseland to Northern Rhodesia. So that Baros Protectorate and Northern Rhodesia Protectorate as two separate, distinct protectorates with separate path towards engaging the British, separate entities in terms of nation states, were given a common governor to rule over both, to head the administration, the overall administration of both Barotseland Protectorate and Northern Rhodesia Protectorate. And this is not unusual because the British High Commission, who shifted from Cape Town to Mafeking, which is just south of the Botswana border, was administering the protectorate of Basotholand and Bechuanaland and Swaziland. So although they had a common high commission, they were separate countries. So although Northern Rhodesia and the Baros protectorates had a common governor, they were separate. So to fast forward, when the British decide, or when the movement towards independence takes root, the British indicate that they are not prepared to continue the protection of Barotseland once their protection of Northern Rhodesia finished. So they were interested in how to exit. Now, the Barotseland Agreement is the negotiated exit plan for the British, and also the negotiated arrangement of how Barotseland and Northern Rhodesia Protectorate will go forward, as the Barotseland Agreement says, as one country, one nation. That's what the Barotseland Agreement is all about. So the necessity of the Barotseland Agreement is that in the exit of the British colonial authorities, there was a question of what happens now to their previous agreements. So the Barotseland husband that. To summarize that, what is the Barotseland Agreement?
And where are we with it?
First and foremost, my message to Zambians is to stop being lied to. My message to young people is that read. The very first paragraph of the Barotseland Agreement indicates its purpose. And its stated purpose is to integrate Barotseland with Northern Rhodesia to create Zambia. So stop being lied to that the Barotseland Agreement is about secession. Check for yourself. You discover that the Barotseland Agreement is for integration and not that. So that's number one. Number two, the Barotseland Agreement confirms that the indigenous African government of Barotseland will be the principal local government authority over Barotseland. That's number two part of the Barotseland Agreement. The third part, which is also quite important, very critical important, is that it lists, in exercising its local authority, what function will this government have? So within the Barotseland Agreement, there is a list of the functions. I won't go over them, there are many. But I always don't forget to say the number one area in which the Barotseland local authority was to be exercised is over land and natural resources, as well as a lot of other stuff. So those are the aspects of it. The other part which is important in the Barotseland Agreement is the guidance that if Barotseland is going to be an integral part of Zambia, then Barosi people, nationals, will be citizens of Zambia to be treated equally as other Zambian citizens. And that the human rights of Barosi people will be assured together with the human rights of the other Zambians. That also is in there. Lastly, let me say that the other important part of the Barotseland Agreement is the guidance of how should the Barotseland government relate to the Northern Rhodesia government. And there are two words. One is cooperation. That the Barosi government is guided to be cooperative in its relation with Zambia. And the Zambian government is urged to be consultative in her governance. That is what Barotseland Agreement is all about.
Wow. So quickly, where are we with that agreement?
Where we are is that we've been lied to. And the Barotseland Agreement has been unilaterally abrogated on the basis of lies. And in the process, the very basis of One Zambia, One Nation has been undermined. And this problem will not go away by wishful thinking. I'm hearing lately that what the Barosi need is development. That is rubbish. When the African politicians were fighting against British colonialism, which African nationalists would accept if the British said, no, don't fight for independence, we are going to build you a bridge? Why didn't the Zambians stop fighting for freedom? Because Cicero has built a railway from Cape Town to Sakanya, had built a bridge over the Vic Falls. Is that pyramid called the flyover in Lusaka more amazing than the bridge over Vic Falls? What if when we fought against the Federation, we stopped? So, no, Welensky has said he's building Kariba Dam. The freedom of people to govern themselves is not purchasable. There's no price for it. And people who are denied their freedom, it may not be them, but their descendants will fight for that freedom, regardless of how many bridges you build, how many jobs you create, how many suits you distribute, how many schools you build. All those things are good things, but they are better for free people, not for people who are dominated by others.
Prince Aka, it was nice talking to you. I've enjoyed myself. I feel like, we can stay here the whole day because there's so much that one can actually draw from your life and learn from you. This has been exciting for us, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody, your team coming in force and not having to drag me to Lusaka.
I like that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure having you on Ignite with Mwangala.
Thank you.
So there you have it. I was talking to Prince Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika, who was just giving us an insight or lessons that we can draw from his life. This has been Mwangala Chakalashi Santos. Join us for another exciting episode of Ignite with Mwangala.